Welcome back, everyone. Let's begin our exploration of Darwin's theory of evolution with Lecture 4. Darwin's theory of evolution explains and describes how organisms on Earth have changed over time and acquired a diversity of new forms. This famous theory provides a good example of how a scientist develops a hypothesis and how a scientific theory grows and wins acceptance. Charles Robert Darwin, 1809 to 1882, was an English naturalist who, after 30 years of study and observation, wrote one of the most famous and influential books of all time. This book, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, created a sensation when it was published, and the ideas of Darwin expressed in it have played a central role in the development of human thought ever since. Several earlier naturalists and philosophers had presented the view that living things must have changed during the history of life on Earth. That is, evolution has occurred, and living things are now different from how they began. Darwin's contribution was a concept he called natural selection, which he proposed as a coherent, logical explanation for this process, and he brought his idea to wide public attention. Darwin had the chance to study a wide variety of plants and animals on continents and islands and in distant seas. Darwin observed several phenomena that were of central importance to his researching his conclusion. Repeatedly, Darwin saw that the characteristics of similar species varied somewhat from place to place. These geographical patterns suggested to him that lineages change gradually as species migrate from one area to another. On the Galapagos Islands, 960 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador, Darwin encountered a variety of different finches on the various islands. The 14 species, although related, differed slightly in appearance. Darwin thought it was reasonable to assume that all these birds had descended from a common ancestor, arriving from the South American mainland several million years ago. Eating different foods on different islands, the finches' beaks had changed during their descent. Descent with modification, or evolution. Darwin's great achievement lies in his ability to move beyond all the individual observations to formulate the hypothesis that evolution occurs because of natural selection. He knew that animal breeders selected certain varieties of pigeons and other animals, such as dogs, to produce certain characteristics, a process Darwin called artificial selection. Surely, if pigeon breeders could foster variation by artificial selection, nature could do the same. Process Darwin called natural selection. The evidence supporting his theory has grown progressively stronger. We now know the fossil record to a degree that was unthinkable in the 19th century. And although truly intermediate organisms are hard to determine, paleontologists have found what appear to be transitional forms, see Figure 2, and found them at the predicted positions in time. Recent discoveries of microscopic fossils have extended the known history of life on Earth back to about 3.5 billion years ago. The discovery of other fossils has supported Darwin's prediction and thus shed light on how organisms have, over this enormous time span, evolved from the simple to the complex. For vertebrate animals especially, the fossil record is rich and exhibits a graded series of changes in form, with the evolutionary sequence visible for all to see. Darwin's theory predicted the Earth must be incredibly old. But some physicists argued that the Earth was only a few thousand years old. Using evidence obtained by studying the rates of radioactive decay, we now know that the physicists of Darwin's time were very wrong. The Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Darwin received some of his sharpest criticism in the area of heredity. At that time, no one had any concept of how genes or how heredity works. So it was not possible for Darwin to explain completely how evolution occurs. When scientists began to understand the laws of inheritance, this problem with Darwin's theory vanished. In humans, cats, whales, and bats, for example, the same bones are present, indicating their evolutionary past. These bones are said to be homologous in the different vertebrates. That is, they have the same evolutionary origin, but they now differ in structure and function. They are contrasted with analogous structures, such as the wings of birds and butterflies, which have similar function, but different evolutionary origins. Evolutionary patterns are also revealed at the molecular level. By comparing the genomes, that is, the sequences of all the genes of different groups of animals or plants, we can more precisely specify the degree of relationship among the groups. A series of evolutionary changes over time should involve a continual accumulation of genetic changes in the DNA. This difference can be seen clearly in the protein hemoglobin. Macaques, which like humans are primates, have fewer differences from humans in the 146 amino acid hemoglobin beta chain than do more distantly related mammals, such as dogs. Non-mammalian vertebrates, such as birds and frogs, differ even more. The sequences of some genes, such as the ones specifying the hemoglobin proteins, have been determined in many organisms. And the entire time course of their evolution can be laid out with confidence by tracing the origins of particular nucleotide changes in the gene sequence. The pattern of descent obtained is called a phylogenetic tree. It represents the evolutionary history of the gene, its family tree. Molecular phylogenetic trees agree well with those derived from the fossil record, which is strong evidence of evolution. The pattern of accumulating DNA changes represents, in a real sense, the footprints of evolutionary history. Darwin observed differences in related organisms and proposed the hypothesis of evolution by natural selection to explain these differences. The predictions generated by natural selection have been tested and continue to be tested by analysis of the fossil record, genetics, comparative anatomy, and even the DNA of living organisms. The diversity of life arises by evolutionary change, leading to the present biodiversity we see. Biologists divide life's great diversity into three great groups called domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. The domains bacteria and archaea are composed of single-cell organisms, prokaryotes, with little internal structure. And the domain eukarya is made up of organisms, eukaryotes, composed of a complex, organized cell or multiple complex cells. Within eukarya, there are four main groups called kingdoms. Kingdom Plantae consists of organisms that have cell walls of cellulose and obtain energy by photosynthesis. Organisms in the kingdom Fungi have cell walls of chitin and obtain energy by secreting digestive enzymes and then absorbing the products they release from the external environment. Kingdom Animalia contains organisms that lack cell walls and obtain energy by first ingesting other organisms and then digesting them internally. Biology is a broad and complex field, but we can identify unifying themes in this complexity. Cells are the basic unit of life, and they are information processing machines. The structures of molecules, macromolecular complexes, cells, and even higher levels of organization are related to their functions. The diversity of life can be classified and organized based on similar features. Biologists identify three large domains that encompass 6 kingdoms. Living organisms can use energy to construct complex molecules from simple ones, and are thus not in a state of thermodynamic equilibrium. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture on kingdoms and domains, etc. Look forward to seeing you again for lecture 5, when we explore the concept further. Thank you.